main contribution of some of my friends on the other side of the aisle have made in the fight against ISIL is to criticize this administration and me for not using the phrase radical Islam. That's the key, they tell us. We can't beat ISIL unless we call them radical Islamists. What exactly would using this label accomplish? What exactly would it change? Calling a threat by a different name does not make it go away. This is a political distraction.
The words we use, how they are used, when they are used, and why they are used. All part of the debate centering on another mass killing in America and why this person did what they did. Presumptive Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump was quick on the verbal draw this weekend when it came to attacking presumptive Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton and President Barack Obama over their reticence to use the phrase radical Islamism. And whether it was his words or the heinous nature of the Orlando attack, Clinton backed off her previous statements and used those words in context. Her issue is that whether it's radical jihadism or radical Islamism, they're the same thing. And simply saying it out loud does nothing to further the conversation or bring us to a point where we do a better job of going after the killers. Let's begin there with this Tuesday version of The Political Animal. Welcome back, veteran Democratic media strategist at Cate Communications, Franco Ripple, joined by the co-founder and editor-in-chief for the PolitiStick and also at the LibertyDaily.com, Jennifer Burke. I thank you both for joining us. Ladies first, Jennifer, I begin with you. Why is it so important that we use these words?
You know, words do have meaning. And my first thought when I heard Obama say that and, say what difference does it make, basically, is I thought back to Fort Hood and the refusal to even call that terrorism. They referred to as workplace violence that had many ramifications, including those who were wounded not getting the Purple Heart benefits that they should have received. And so we've gone from that incident, calling it workplace violence, to now trying to take an act of terrorism and turn it into a conversation for gun control and gun violence, as if a terrorist is going to obey any kind of gun law or any law at all.
So Franco,
words do have meaning. I think it's important to call it out for what it is.
Gotcha. Franco, let me then take it the other side. Why is it so important? Because, wait a minute, there are people saying we need to know what this is. You, the American people, deserve to know the kind of attack that we are under every single day. They will fire back. That's why you've got to use this phrase. What do you think?
I think the American people know, and I think the president is absolutely right to say, what difference does it make? Seriously, to the people who fight this stuff every day, to the counterterrorism experts and the national security experts who are actually engaged in the fight against radicalism and against terrorism, what difference does it make? The only people who are demanding that this term be used are Donald Trump and talking heads on television like us. So, Jennifer, I have to ask you, what concrete, exact, specific difference would it make in the fight against terrorism? I don't think you can tell me.
I don't think most Americans can say exactly what we're doing in the fight against terrorism. I know Obama says that, he's bombed, areas in the Middle East, I guess, and people have said there's nothing strategic about it. It's really a for show thing that isn't doing anything. But again, I think when you take a radical Islamic terrorist who we knew by the time Obama gave his remarks after that terrorist attack in Orlando, we knew he pledged allegiance to ISIS. We knew he pledged allegiance to the Boston bombers. We knew that he had ties to radical Islamic terrorism. We knew some of the things his father said online, yet still, instead of saying this is an act, yes, he said it's an act of terror, I give him that, but it wasn't an act of terror in his words by a radical Islamist. It was
Jennifer, how does that stop it? How does that?
Let me stop here for one sec because I want to inject something here into this conversation. Let's be very fair here. When you talk about ties to radical Islamic terrorism, he basically came out and said that he was in favor of and he was supporting different groups who are constantly fighting against each other. Even today, there are reports coming out that this is not necessarily about radical terrorism. This is about a young man who allegedly was gay and may have had some other problems as well psychologically. So, Jennifer, very briefly answer that question. There are those who say that you can say the words, but you've got to be absolutely certain that it is exactly the case. And is it not fair to say that in some reports we're seeing today, legitimate media reports, we don't know if that's the case yet?
Well, we also know for sure it's not a case of just a gun on its own volition committing some act of evil. I know there are lots of things, there are lots of questions about this guy. It wasn't, Obama said at the last minute he pledged allegiance to ISIS as if it was just an afterthought. This was a thing long time, that was obviously being planned. He had been casing various areas. I mean, they are still investigating, but very early on, authorities in Orlando said that they believe that there were ties to Islamic terrorism.
Okay,
so,
okay,
Jennifer,
that's very fair.
the-
That's very fair. By the way, I want to remind our viewers here, 1-877-Newsmax. We're going to get to your phone calls in about 2.5 minutes. Franco, go ahead. I know you want to answer back to this.
I'm sorry, I've got to address this because, Jennifer, you're absolutely right. A gun on its own did not kill anybody. But how he got the gun absolutely matters, because for far too long, congressional Republicans have stood in the way of some common sense things that the president and others have rightfully called for, such as putting folks who are on potential terror FBI watch lists, okay, suspected terrorism suspects, putting them on a list and not allowing them to buy a gun. This guy was on a list not once, but twice, and he was taken off the list, no longer being watched by the FBI. But shouldn't that have been enough for this guy to not be able to walk in and buy a gun?
I've only got about a minute left here, but let me make this point. And Jennifer, I think Franco's point is well taken, because let's be honest here. This is another one of those instances where not everything was done. Let's leave out the fact, let's stop using the phrase deeper background checks. Let's just use the phrase coordinated background checks, because is it right for somebody to be able to legally walk in and buy a gun, a weapon, any sort of weapon, if they've been looked at twice by the FBI? Doesn't that raise a flag?
Well, I mean, you would think it would, but also you look at the people who have been put on a watch list for who knows what reason. The Weekly Standard, Stephen Hayes was put on a watch list. He wasn't even able to get on an airplane.
But isn't safety better?
Jennifer, you're missing words here. You're missing the point, which is that someone who is under FBI surveillance twice for there's all kinds of reasons why someone might get on a list. But for those who we know that the FBI knows that they had potential radical ties, how about we just start there? How about we start with expanded background checks?
Well, and the FBI, unfortunately,
start with one thing.
Investigated and found there to be nothing.
Can we just say this?
Multiple times dropped the ball and found there to be nothing, even though there were.
How about we start with just one thing that would?
And we're also talking about a government. It's amazing to me when people say that. I was just thinking the other day, we're talking about a government who won't even revoke passports of individuals who go overseas to train with Islamic terrorists.
Okay, I'm out of time on this, but let me do this.
That might inadvertently be put on the watch list should not have the right to buy a gun, but you can go and train with terrorists and be let back into the country.
Okay, I'm out of time, unfortunately, on this, and we're going to go to our phone calls at 1-877-Newsmax, but let's just say this. Let me get a yes or a no from both of you. Jennifer, you first. Is it not worthy to say at this point, though, that we need to make sure that the coordinated effort is done properly? Legal purchase of weapons, of those who are allowed to do it? Absolutely, that is the Second Amendment. But would you not say that we need to make sure we are coordinated and make sure that every piece of information is known, possibly, that we need to know about someone who wants to purchase guns? Yes?
I mean, there's obviously some holes when the FBI is investigating somebody.
Gotcha.
Yet he passes the federal background check.
Gotcha. We got to
make this easy.
We got to close
Yes,
those holes.
and
Franco, would you agree with that statement that I just made as well?
Yes, and expand the background checks. Yes.
Okay. You had to slip the last little bit in there. I get it. But at least we're finding a way to where Republican, Democrat, left, right, we can start to agree on something in this issue, which I think is a key to at least getting it done down the road. Jennifer Burke, Franco Ripple, great conversation. We're going to do it again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I got 45 seconds. Travis from Wichita, Kansas, you got 20 seconds on the hard line. Go.
Yeah, I find it awful offensive that Franco is so anxious to take Americans' rights away. Jennifer's absolutely right that words do have meaning. Mr. Zogby, who wants to call this guy frustrated homosexuals don't make repeated trips to Saudi Arabia, don't take prayer or mass to work.
Do you think gun control
day.
is the answer, yes or no?
Gun control has nothing to do with it. If he doesn't have a
thank
gun,
you, Travis. I got to move on.
Or...
Roger in Virginia. Roger, I got 20 seconds. You're talking about Trump on foreign policy. 20 seconds, go.
We're headed to where nobody will be able to do anything because we'll be under martial law. You won't be able to be on the news. We'll be hearing, just listening to the military. And
I don't think that's going to happen at all, and I think you're really stretching the truth here, all right? 1-877-Newsmax, more of your calls. Stay with us. The Hardline continues.